Hi there, and welcome to Grey Muzzle Geekery for the week of May 20th, 2019. I'm your host, Dusty Red, and with me as always,
Dusty White.
And we'll get right into this week's news. Reroll is an upcoming app for D&D character sheets that lets you create a 16-bit avatar for your character. With the Kickstarter being such a success, be sure to keep an eye out for this app in your app store.
Move aside, Ben Affleck. Robert Pattinson is to sparkle his way into playing Batman in The Batman for Matt Reeves and Warner Brothers.
Sony and Microsoft team up for cloud gaming ahead of Google Stadia. While competing in the same field of entertainment, the two console gaming rivals signed a memorandum of understanding under which both companies will explore joint development of future cloud solutions in Microsoft Azure. This agreement, however, extends to AI and semiconductors. So, Sony and Microsoft join together, making AI stuff. Skynet is happening.
Flat-footed geeks everywhere rejoice. David Tennant's Doctor Who Converse sneakers are going up for auction.
And unfortunately, we have to announce for the Grey Muzzle Graveyard, we have a little furry friend that has unfortunately passed away at the age of 7 on May 7, 2019, Grumpy Cat. The famous cat of all the memes, the memes, the memes. Memes kids. We don't die, we multiply.
The Rainbow Bridge has a little bit more grump to it today.
Yeah, it's like that streak of brown down the side or something. Just mad brown. But yeah, unfortunately, yes, Grumpy Cat has passed away at the age of 7 on May 7, 2019.
So we have some Grey Muzzle Geekery shout-outs. To our Patreon, shout-outs to Clay, Ryan, and Donna.
Thanks for the allowance, Mom!
Our Grey Muzzle Geekery Discord is now live. Link to our Discord can be found in our show notes. And then finally, check out our friends at Loaded Dice Adventurers. Find them on Twitch at Loaded Dice Adventurers. They broadcast every Monday at 7:30 Central PM. And our DM, soon to be guest host or guest interview.
No, we're doing interview.
Interview with Pat.
So that concludes our little intro to this very interesting start to the podcast. And, hey. So we have obviously a little review of something to talk about as we had just finished our event at Travesty.
Kiera, I hear you screaming from here. It's Traverse City,
Michigan, playing Alliance. And so let's go right out the gate. Let's also, as we talked a little bit, we've noticed we definitely got very LARP-centric and very heavy into live-action role-playing game. And not all of our listeners are players of LARPs. So we're going to take a little special attention to try to wrap this around to make sure that it kind of touches a variety of games. Because the thing is, even though LARPing and people kind of look and go, well, I'm not a LARPer, but I play D&D, there's so many overlapping scenarios and so many overlapping situations that cause similar issues and similar problems and similar positive notes and other things that kind of fold in. With that being said, let's go right into Traverse City. What was your take on it, Dusty?
I really enjoyed this event for not necessarily the things that I normally enjoy an event for. It was a callback for me, and again, this is just my opinion, but the callback to a Days Go By for me of a history of a smaller event, a smaller grouping of people, and just really getting back to some fundamentals that I've kind of forgotten about as far as character development and more personal interactions when it comes to LARPing.
So you come from obviously a Nero background, and for our listeners, New England Role Playing Organization. When did you start exactly again?
Early April, early spring of 2004.
2004. So you have a time where you definitely had a smaller crowd there. So how did the game play out then? Rules aside, you had character interactions were kind of a focus, correct?
Correct.
What did you draw from that, or what do you draw? Where do you draw your comparisons between that event and the one you just finished in 2019?
The events that I used to go to for Nero Chronicles specifically, they tended to be more character specific or character centralized. Where I used to play, there was a core group of players, I want to say like 15 to 20 of us, that were used to playing a smaller game. And even the environment in game were geared towards that. It was a outpost. It was a kind of Wild West type of scenario where the kingdom wasn't really putting a thumb on people. It was just, hey, you're out in the no man land, govern yourself.
How much of the campsite affects that? Obviously, we spent a weekend in the woods at campsites. This particular weekend, we were at a YMCA camp. Very beautiful camp.
Oh, that tavern. I could die for that tavern.
The tavern was stunning, with the fireplace in the center and the windows
Stonework.
overlooking the stone, with the two windows on either side, with the doors overlooking
the lake.
The lake that was there. I keep calling it a river.
It's definitely a lake.
Well, there's a lake there, and then off to the other side, you had a large pond.
Yeah, right.
Small river. It's river again. Small lake, large pond type scenario. Like, I guess it's a pond, but yeah.
With a porch and just woodwork, and it was amazing.
That said, a good chunk of the cabins next to that were under construction. So
Correct.
They're inaccessible by us. Further down the road, there was more, I'm going to air quote, primitive cabins, which are just wooden cabins with no heat, no air, no insulation.
Right.
But they had nice beds.
Yeah.
They had nice bed set up. It's nice, clean. Go up the stairs and you're in. You're out of the elements for the most part. It was cold, but whatever. Did that affect any of your view or your feeling of it feeling like an outpost? Was it player population? Was it the scarcity or the number of NPCs / storytellers / plot DMs, whatever, that interacted with you? Was it the, let's say, physical location, other players, or the interaction with plot that made that feeling for you?
I think it was a little bit of all of those factors there.
Because we had a walk from where town was, basically, where the player characters slept.
Right.
Was a good, 2-minute walk?
Yeah.
Down a path and around the construction, basically.
Construction, and then down a hill.
To the actual tavern.
Yeah.
So that little travel, did that cause a feeling of outside of town or very rustic type?
It did. It kind of throws me back to my beginning days as starting at Chronicles, where it was a big long roads from essentially the start of the camp to where we would be a tavern, or where it would mainly gather as a group, versus down the little side chutes where there would be cabins. So it does physically feel like more of a trek to go back into town, or hey, I'm going to the cabin, or I'm going to where we sleep to go do something, versus hey, I need to go to the tavern, make sure I have everything with me, make sure I'm not traveling by myself, make sure that there's not tree stumps that are going to jump out and kill me. So it was a definitely feel physically to walk into tavern and walk into town.
So how does that differ from, say, from our experience when we played at Nero Kalamazoo, where the tavern was in one building and then all of these sleeping quarters were within a stone's throw away? Did that feeling cause that as well? Because there wasn't that many players as well in some places at Nero Kalamazoo. Did that add or take away? Like, what is the key differences here that we think that might have been, that made it feel like an outpost? I have a different view than you do, admittedly. I have a different view, but I want to hammer on yours because you're onto something, I think.
For me to feel, because the tavern and the main 3 sleeping areas for Nero Kazu are a stone's throw away, it feels more close-knit, so it feels like there's more players. There are more characters. So it feels more tight-knit, or it feels more populated, when you're a little bit more spread out and, hey, if our cabin gets attacked in the middle of the night, it is a little bit more fearful or a little bit more dangerous than, hey, our cabin's getting attacked in the middle of the night and I just have to yell loud enough that the cabin next door, my neighbor down the way is going to hear me. So it physically adds a little bit more structure to it than when at Keizu we're more closed in, more encompassed.
It definitely had that outposty type feeling, only because I think there's a lot of miscommunication, unfortunately, from what I noticed. One, and even talking to some of the members of Plot, they noticed that, like, the job board that they had, because, like, with any, like, Dungeons & Dragons campaign or anything else, we're a bunch of murder hobos that are looking for trouble, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay,
for the most part,
sure.
that's what when you're dealing with LARPs, at least between Alliance and Euro, and even like Dystopia Rising, these other games, for the most part, we're murder hobos. We roll in, we're looking to cause trouble. Your characters are generally going to be more powerful than the average person,
right?
To the point of we're able to resurrect. Like, your character dies and you're able to come back from the dead with relative ease compared to the average, like, farmer who gets murdered and they're dead for good. Like,
Okay.
they're dead.
Right.
We're
We're special.
Back. We're special. Well, it's a case of where... I guess it's a case of... Because you have a bunch of murder hobos coming in, looking for a job and looking for work and such, the job board was kind of tucked away on the other side of the cabins.
I forgot about it.
I
read it one time Friday night and completely forgot about it on Saturday. It just wasn't. It wasn't in an area that I kept.
Well, that's the thing.
Seeing.
It was definitely mentioned that it should be put in a more visible area, very accessible, so it didn't get touched much because people it was out of sight, out of mind type situation.
Absolutely.
It wasn't there. So that's the first critique there was people didn't know what to do a little bit because of what are we doing? What is a job board? I've got mixed feelings on job boards, and that's an entire conversation for later. I like them in some aspects because they allow players to do a variety of things.
They allow them to be as proactive as you want to be. Hey, I'm bored. Guess what? Instead of going and jaunting through the woods and quote unquote looking for trouble,
sure,
you have something. Hey, I'm going to go investigate. Blah.
At the same time, I worry that sometimes teams get lazy, throw everything at the job board, and go, "This is the story for the weekend. They'll come to us."
Yeah.
So, and I've seen that. And I've seen both. I'm not nixing on any particular chapter for doing that,
right?
But I have seen it, and it's a very dangerous line I could easily sway. So that might touch into this particular weekend where things felt a little bit slower.
Yeah,
for sure. Friday night, I know I did one thing, and that even was, I don't say riddled with, but had some communication issues. I'm like, oh, we're supposed to go here. Oh, we're supposed to go there. We're looking for a thing. Things are supposed to be all over the place. They weren't all over the place. They're actually kind of in one smaller area. It happens, but it definitely put a immediate, like, mood for me. Again,
see, and that's the specificness, or that's the difference of someone like you who plays a very specific character, like a roguish type character and a sneaker in the woods, where if as a plot team you kind of go to tap into that, and there's almost two different mods being ran at the same time, because our group, the other non-rogue characters, like, hey, we're not sneaky, stomp, stomp, stomp through the woods, had a different experience. Same mod, we were all on the same mod, but we had a vastly different experience because of the way that the mod was essentially repped or represented. We got to experience something, unfortunately on our end, was I seemed to be a little bit more in the vein of what they were trying to accomplish of, hey, we're sneaking through the woods, but we weren't there to sneak. We were there to, if someone encountered us, we were going to talk. While you were supposed to be...
Well, that's the thing. You guys were our backup.
Right.
Myself and, well, my two characters, let's neutralize it a little bit because we got some biasness. And again, I don't want to lose our non-LARPer listeners on these conversations. So you set up a situation where you have two players that are basically going to do like a reconnaissance mission and going to go do a thing. You can obviously have a number of players, because how many was total on that? Like 8 people were there together? 7 people? We'll say 7 people. 7 or 8
okay.
people. So you have 8 people that are going to go do a mission. 2 of the people are tasked to go and do recon. Those 2 people went, but then were later caught by, not even caught, but were asked by the people running the storyteller that was running that particular encounter, that module, that engagement, that story, that adventure, that instance dungeon for anybody.
There you go.
That instance that, hey, there's an error, there's miscommunication, can you guys do this and do this? So you had the 2 players go one way and had to deal with that communication issue, which bought time, while the rest of the group were marching on ahead, not realizing...
Trying to make noise, trying to be a distraction, trying to be...
But accidentally, or air quote, accidentally stumbling upon what the...
actual outcome was.
The 2 scouts were sent to do, the 2 reconnaissance people were sent to do, and got pulled out. So that's where my disconnect was that just pulled me from the game.
Okay.
Just ripped me out of it, and was like, hey, there's mistakes, hey, there's issues, okay, fine, I get it, it's cool. But then by the time we went to go reset, and be like, okay, we're running it over here, and then even the description we got...
We had even stumbled onto it
Well, even
at
in
that
the
point.
description we got, it's like, oh, it's by the amphitheater, and there's no amphitheater. It was like a little... bowl of sort, not even that, just a
valley,
like a little mini valley. So we're looking for one thing, it's miscommunication, which happens all the time. So by the time we got that, it definitely put a spin for me of, okay, what is going on? I don't know anymore.
Well, and to kind of circle back to, for our perspective, is here we sent these 2 roguish type characters to go do reconnaissance in the woods, and we're trouncing through the woods, like kicking up leaves, kicking up dust, and trying to be loud and engage essentially the guards and be distractions, and we stumble onto the goal of the adventure or the mod and gather up what we need and start to head out, which totally flipped
realizing going, oh crap, we don't have our 2.
Right, to totally flip the script and be like, okay, well, we're now leaving. We can't leave 2 people behind thinking, because they might be in the woods till, I don't know, sunrise,
and
looking
I've done that.
for this.
I've definitely been in situations where I stayed for hours looking for a thing or doing a thing,
or waiting for people to go to bed.
Yep, look, I'm a rogue. I may or may not have engaged in player versus player combat, which required me hiding underneath a cabin or waiting by a tree or something. No judgment. Stop. Leave me be.
So it turned into a more interesting, from my perspective, interesting concept of, okay, now we're leaving. How do we get your attention? How do we get our rogues' attentions to go like, hey, the clock falls at midnight, caw, basically, essentially.
But ultimately, that was not intended by the plot team.
Correct. So there's a little bit more different of engagement for the plot team. But again, I am fully immersed in the situation of us trying to leave, trying to get our rogues' attention to get you guys to go, oh shit, the task is accomplished. The eagle flies at midnight. So we're heading out, trying to get your attention so that we can wrap up the mod and go, because we still had a drop point. We still had a thing we had to go do it, to accomplish it. So it was a miscommunication for you guys, but it benefited the immersion for the other group. I hate to put it that way, but it flipped the script, and it was just a little bit different than the regular rogue mod that I end up on.
Well, because realistically, then the outcome, if it would have went flawlessly, is you guys are chilling. We would have returned sometime later and been like, okay,
let's go. Right.
So
I've been on that adventure, specifically at Nero Kazu, when you're running around barefoot and in no clothing. Or, I'm sorry.
Whoa! What game are you playing?
You had to go do something where it required, if the person sitting on the path.
Should I just tell that what I had to do?
Yes, please. Because this is the difference.
So there was a module where, I like using Instance Dungeon, because I think that's anybody that's played any MMO has an idea of what an Instance Dungeon is. Everybody has an idea of, like, it's a isolated module, insulated incident, and isolated thing
Okay.
for a specific group or specific character. So we're doing this air quote instance where we're breaking into a library, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
we're breaking
so.
into a
Yep.
library, and I need to get an item out of there. Like, sneak in, crack the safe, get the item, and get out. And the person that was running that module, one of our listeners actually, Mr. Nick Plot of New York Kalamazoo, had the idea of, hey, so this is how I'm going to run it. I'm going to sit on this path, and I'm going to set up a light on this pole at the end of the path. It was like a railroad tie.
Right.
Kind of. It basically kept cars from driving down the path. So it was just like a piece of wood in the center just to be like, hey, no vehicles beyond this point. Set up on there. And it was nice and simple of, I'm going to sit here with my eyes closed, my head down, and I'm going to have a flashlight in my lap. If I hear a noise, I'm going to lift my head and shine the light in that direction. Now, it worked in multiple ways because it wasn't just he had unlimited times. He said he was only going to do it 3 times.
Right. So it limits how many choices
So
he chooses
if
to
he
do it
heard
on.
just a light little snap or something, he has to be damn sure that what he heard was worthy of looking.
Right.
So it turned into a situation of he was restricted by his own rules of I can only look 3 times, so I need to make sure that what I hear is accurate. And my goal was to basically stay on the path. Like I could go a little bit off the path, but I was pretty much limited to the path area because I thought, well, I could walk all the way around now. It's spirit of the rules versus letter. Spirit was I need to be on the path or near and get through.
Right.
So my goal was to sneak past him, moving quietly, moving whatever, get to the thing, turn around, and come back.
Right.
So as soon as that happened, he sits down, flashlight, head down. And it was it you and...
Yeah, it was me. It was
okay,
just me.
you and me. Okay, because I know Keela
was the one
sent
that
us to
sent
do it.
you to do it.
Okay.
But
So you're standing there, and immediately he's like, he puts his head down, you see me taking off my boots. And you're just looking at me like, what? You know, I take off my shoes, my socks, everything, and I'm basically barefoot.
and it's I want to say like April, maybe May at this point, so it's a little cold.
There was still a little snow on the ground. Whatever. Rogue. I do things for people. So I immediately start sneaking across. And I pick up some rocks, too. Because I'm using the rocks in my hand to throw into the woods to just make noise away from me. So I'm whipping them over the guy's head into the woods. So if he hears something, hopefully it looks that way. I later find out that Mr. Nick did not hear me pass him the first time. And when he heard a noise for the first time, he realized it was already coming from behind him. And that he had to use his 3 opportunities at this point because
Otherwise he wasn't going to have them.
He didn't do it. So he ended up looking one time in a completely opposite direction because I did whip a rock and he heard something. So he looked over there. He just looked up, saw nothing, head back down, flashlight off, which is really cool. It's definitely one of those like. Okay.
It was immersive for me, but at the same time, I'm just standing there. In theory,
Watching me barefoot.
I'm in the middle of the quote unquote city. Just might as well be cliche whistling because I'm not doing anything. I'm watching my friend walk down a path barefoot in the snow like a crazy person and hoping
Crazy like
my
a fox.
breath or my heavy breathing isn't gonna mess something up.
So eventually, I get to the second one and get him to look a second time, and then the third, right when I start passing him, I just book it. Which he does end up looking like near my direction, but by the time he looked, I was already across. But yeah, so there's the difference between your end where you are on the I guess at Traverse City where you are at the receiving end or at the module end of it.
Didn't expect to be at the receiving end, but still got the receiving end of the actual physicality of finding what we were looking for and still having to be scared that we were going to be found out.
Right.
Like, we still had guards, in theory, walking around that we had to be aware of
Right.
to take out in case need be.
So, moving away from this, let's as we realize we're already 20-something minutes in, what do we want to tell or talk to our listeners here about Traverse City? Some goods and some bads. Because obviously we strive to be the positive palace here. And every negativity is always an opportunity. And obviously, I'm going to start off because I don't want to make it seem like I'm poo-pooing Traverse City. Because I really admire their ambition and the spirit that they have on which they want to run a game.
Absolutely.
They're super eager players. They're a super eager plot team. They get it. They have an idea of what they want. They have an idea of where they're going. They're excited about the game. They have the opportunity to draw a fair number of players because Traverse City's kind of a way away from, I don't know, all of civilization.
I was like, they're for sure a haul for us.
Yeah, it was about a 5-hour drive for us, but even just their location or proximity to just any other game in the area, there's not much out there. So they have a prime opportunity to snatch up players, to advertise and be like, hey, let's you guys are interested in a fantasy, medieval fantasy game, especially on the heels of Game of Thrones. And
they actually had a lot of newer players coming that weekend. Some of their newer player reps brought consort of her own. And I give her props for that because it added to my game because they were so brand new and eager to play and get into the atmosphere of the game setting.
So obviously one of my big things is again I'm super happy with the work. The campsite's beautiful. I'm looking forward to seeing the construction done.
Yeah.
And having all that set. Not only was the campsite beautiful, but the camp reps. Emily, the YMCA camp liaison. We met her early Friday night. We showed up. She was like, guys, I read the rule book. I'm so excited to see you in your guys' costume. I've talked to my boss. I'm thinking about if I get my work done, I can come and hang out and play with you guys tomorrow. She was super involved in, hey, I'm here for the camp. I want to make sure the camp gets taken care of because that's obviously her job, which is great. We're so big in the community because we have lost camps from previous years or previous places. Right. The campsites are going to have issues with people that don't take care of their camps.
Right.
Unfortunately, all it takes is
LARPers of previous years.
Well, it doesn't even need LARPers. It could just be one incident where somebody leaves something out or something happens, and it just paints a swath across all of it.
Right.
So, yeah, which is even more impressive with Emily is the fact that she isn't a gamer herself.
No.
I asked her, I'm like, hey, are you into... Because I had the opportunity to speak with her a little bit and be like, are you a gamer? Have you played role-playing games, all this other stuff? And she wasn't terribly familiar with this stuff. She played some video games growing up, but nothing that would be like, oh, I played Dungeons and Dragons, or I played Shadow Realm, or anything else. She did her camp stuff. She went to college. She came back, heard about these LARPers that are coming into basically her home.
Yeah,
she loves the campsite. She works with it. She grew up there.
Well,
the camp
who
is
wouldn't?
Her thing.
The camp
was beautiful, but it's also YMCA, so they're really good about just looking at their website too. They're really good about building up.
A community.
Building up self-esteem, helping kids. It's YMCA. It's awesome.
Right.
I love it. So talking to her, I was able to ask her some questions off to the side of have you heard of this and how this? And she's like, no, I didn't hear about it, but I was able to find the rule book online and binge through it in a week. And got excited, got to see what we're about, and then got to actually be on site and watch us in costume, watch us run around and play. And the fact, again, as you said, her eagerness to not only show us love as gamers, but just her dedication to the camp and to her job. It's her job. Everybody's got her job, but you could see that
you could see the excitement that she had for for her job, for her home away from home. Essentially, is being able to drive around on some 20 acres worth of stuff and deal with people that were being there. And obviously, again, they want to make sure it kept clean, and we do have smokers, and they want to make sure the smokers take care of their
Actually, funny thing about the smokers is she specifically said that smoking was perfect.
Yeah.
Other than a couple pieces of litter, which again
could have been from anybody.
But she said that there was the smoking was all the cigarettes were field stripped, and there was all the butts were put away. Everything was cleaned up. She was extremely happy.
Right.
So it's good. So that's one of the major pluses for me on that is the site is fantastic. The staff there welcomes us and is happy to have us there.
Yeah.
And again, the plot team is young and it's excitable and it wants to get things going. Now, immediately on that heel, I have to go with the negative.
Don't call it a negative.
No,
call it constructive.
This is constructive. We'll go with that. With the rule change of 2.0 coming into fruition,
okay,
it seems like they are not quite there yet for the rules. It seems like they're still learning the rules. It seems like they're still trying to get things down to the point of, or they actually had some like special custom abilities for that weekend. Some plot effects, some LCO, local chapter only things that happened.
Some flavor
that you want to call it, but it still felt to me that they were adjusting to the new rule set because we're still technically in beta.
Right.
I guess. We're still in the trial period. We're still in the...
For another 2 weeks.
For another 2 weeks. Well, at the era of this, it'll be like a week and a half left.
Right.
There's still... But it's been for about a year-ish, 8 months or so, something like that, of, hey, here's these new rules. Learn them, because this is going to be in effect.
This is the wave of the future.
Yeah, this is how the game's going to go now. And it just feels that some locations are more receptive to these rules than others. So because of which, some people haven't quite grabbed onto some of these rules and ran with it. And it just becomes almost a dangerous game when you're trying to learn a new rule set.
Right.
Because ultimately you're learning a new rule set. This isn't just like a subtle change with a couple things. There's a lot of things in Alliance 2.0 that is vastly different from previous, which is what, Alliance 1.3.
Right.
But then you mix that up with, I don't know how, they haven't run terribly often for Traverse City.
Right.
Mixed with, I don't know if there's apprehension. Again, I'm not going to speak on behalf of anybody. This is
just your own opinion.
I'm
Got
going to put my foot down and say this is 100% my own opinion. But it seems like there's a level of, I don't want to say resistance. It seems like too strong of a word. Hesitancy or uncertainty or something with the rule set that is reflective of their staff or their plot team that makes it difficult to grasp everything. And there's a couple events that happened on the weekend where some of the game had to come to a stop or at least a slowdown to figure out how does this rule work or how does this work or what happens here. And again, I understand it's beta. It's still they're beta testing. They're still play testing everything.
No one's expecting everyone to be perfect.
But you could definitely tell who has read and is prepared and who is still lagging behind on some stuff. So that was my major hard critique.
So to circle around on that and to, again, kind of play towards a larger audience base here, what is, for tabletopping and things like that, what is your reset concept? How do you gain set abilities back?
So that's a rough segue, but I see where you're going in there. So obviously, in all tabletop games, or even in PC games, computer games, whatever, you have resources. Be it magic points, MP,
mana,
or hit points, mana, whatever else. And generally speaking, a lot of these comes back through resting. Be it resting for 8 hours or whatever else. Now, obviously, at a LARP, we don't have the luxury of time. We're there from Friday, 10 p.m. until Sunday, 2 a.m. Realistically, 2, 3, 4 a.m., whatever. Sunday, 2 a.m. So you only got a 36-hour window at best to play. Traditionally, for most LARPs, or at least for Nero and Alliance, 6 p.m. was the reset.
On Saturday.
Well, 6 p.m. period.
Oh, period.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's in the rules. It states that 6 p.m. is the start or the end of a new day, start of a new day, however you want to look at it.
Your beginning of the next logistical period.
Right. When you get all your skills or your MP back. Right. You don't need to rest. They just magically come back. With mystic force, they all come back. But, that being said, with it being 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock Friday to 6 o'clock Saturday is like 80% of your game. Where then 6 o'clock Saturday
to
2 a.m. Sunday, you only got a smaller window. So a lot of games have tried to come up with ideas to how do we deal with allowing players to get their skills back. If you want to cut the day in half, dead even,
it would be like 4 or
no, closer like 2.
2?
2
Okay.
to noon. But obviously, you're sleeping, or some people are sleeping. I, in my early days, have stayed up all night. Now, I basically died on Saturday, but yeah, Friday, go to bed at what, Blue 30, which is like 4 in the morning?
Yeah,
So
roughly.
Saturday morning. So realistically, so if we're going to rough, so you play 10 p.m. Friday to 3 a.m.
3 a.m. Saturday morning, and you're feeling good after only about 4 hours of sleep,
Well, that's the
4
other
or
thing. So you
5
go to bed
hours
at
sleep.
3, and you're up by 8 or 9?
Roughly, people are starting to get
9
up,
or
moving
10.
around.
I'm not moving till 11.
You're a special case.
Well, you bring me coffee.
I do. But roughly, people are starting to get up, shuffle their feet, go into the
Breakfast is like 10
bathroom,
o'clock.
resetting their makeup,
Ugh.
like getting dressed. There's a certain level, even at the point of if you get up before that rough hour, like 4 or 5 hour window, you're really kind of only walking around LARPing or RPing with other players because plot's still asleep.
And that's the other thing,
your
too. is
storytellers
that
are still asleep.
Your plot team, your storytellers, your dungeon masters, whatever you want to call them, are pretty much in bed for a little bit. Now, obviously, if they have a bigger staff or you have more players at the event, I have seen rotating schedules and everything else. But realistically, if you're looking at an event that has less than 75 players, is a good safe number. Less than 75 players, you pretty much, hey, monster camp, they call it. Your monster camp, your NPCs, your plot team is going to bed at like 3 or 4 a.m. and will resume at like 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Because at least
Because then
you're
the tavern,
getting
the
6
people
hours of
that are
sleep.
making your breakfast are up doing that. Everybody eats breakfast-ish at like 11:30, closer to noon. Like it's definitely brunch.
So your time split
yeah.
goes back to about 2. That being said, one of the things that was proposed is, hey, rather than game starting at 6 or ending at 6, that time split.
That new logistical period.
Yeah, that new period of getting all your skills back, your magic points, your spells, whatever, happening at 6, let's push it back to 2.
Push it up to 2.
Or push it up to 2 p.m.
Right.
on Saturday. Now, merits and flaws. What's your take on it?
I personally, as somebody that used to run plot, am for it. 100% for it. It seems like if you don't suddenly... Okay. So for us as travelers that travel a little bit of a distance to get to the games that we play, it seems a little rough on Friday night because it takes a little longer for us to get into games. Sometimes we are not 100% ready to be in game when game on is called. So it takes us a little longer to get into game, but I may go to bed on Friday night at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, only doing 1 or 2 adventures and not really getting the full gamut of my, being able to get enough time to use the full gamut of my spells or skills or whatever you want to call them. But I'm okay with that because at the end of the day, I'm only one person versus a plot team of 4 or 5 people that they may stay up till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning, keeping people up and active. But
Friday morning or Saturday morning?
Friday morning.
Okay.
So into Saturday morning. So Friday night into Saturday morning, keeping people up and active. But come Saturday night at 11, 12 o'clock midnight, they're dead on their feet. And this is the reason why I feel like 2 p.m. is starting to become more normal, because those are the people that still have to get up Sunday morning, pack up an NPC camp, clean up essentially a tavern, and go home. They're dead. They have physically given everything. Yes, I say physically a lot. I apologize now. We'll make it a drinking game. Drink. So you will have these people dead on their feet and they still have to get up, function as adults, get things cleaned up, get things packed up, and be able to leave a campsite better than what we arrived to, hopefully, in theory, and go out to eat and try to socialize and be functioning adults.
I think that's the big thing that you have to target right there is ultimately the game is going to benefit if you have your plot team and your players up at a reasonable time on Sunday to ensure that the campsite is in a better condition than what the players got there.
People aren't waking up at 11 and being like, I'm packing up my own stuff and I'm leaving.
And
they need to care about everybody as a group getting the campsite taken care of.
And if anything, for a purely selfish reason, it allows the game to continue to happen at that chapter.
Right.
Like, and from the campsite allowing these weirdos in makeup with foam weapons to show up and play on their location.
Right.
All the way to, if I was running the game, I mean, we'll go back to Dungeon Masters and D&D and stuff like that. If I'm going to be like, hey, I'm going to be a DM, and I'm going to deal with buying all the books, and paying for pizza, and having my house prepared, and
Hosting.
you guys, and I'm going to host, and you guys roll in, you guys play, you leave your shit on the table, and you bounce.
Guess who's stuck cleaning it up?
And I'm still sitting around cleaning it up. How many more sessions do you think that I'm going to want to run?
Right.
And it goes like that to the people who run these LARPs of like, okay, I have this campsite. I have to clean it, make sure everything's good. And if people all leave, at the end of the day, if everybody on campsite just leaves and the game runner, the DMs, the chapter owners are still on site with a messy campsite, odds are they're going to be there till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night cleaning. Now, obviously, those players will probably they'll be asked to never show up again. But that's a down the road problem. The immediate problem is, cool, it's 4:30 on Sunday and I'm mopping floors because
I still have to make sure I'm
sure
responsible,
or else I get charged
X amount of money, or never be able to play again or rent the site. So it has led to a better community outcome. This is my opinion. I would like it to believe that by having reset start earlier, it leaves Saturday night for those people to go to bed at a reasonable time, be able to get up and function and be adults on Sunday. And it really is just a swing of, I think, some things where we lacked responsibility to before as a community, and playing till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, then getting up and still running stuff on Sunday. It led to a lot of loss of camps. Like,
oh, for sure.
I feel like there would be, if we were able to do a research study about it, there would be a correlation of how many camps have LARPers lost over the years because people showed up, played way too late into Saturday, got up Sunday, people either played or bounced, didn't give a crap about the site itself, and was left to too few people to clean up, and that site is no longer able to be, and almost tarnished for any LARP, not just us, not just Nero, not just Alliance, but any LARP. There's camps in Wisconsin that will not rent to LARPs.
A lot of these campsites don't know the difference between these games.
Right.
They don't know the difference between, be it a vampire game or a post-apocalyptic game like Dystopia Rising, a fantasy game like Alliance or Nero, or any other game that may exist in between. All they know is it's a bunch of weirdos or gamers or whatever.
Spending 36 hours in their site.
They're going to be here all weekend.
Yep.
And they're going to play a game and hopefully leave with the campsite cleaner than what they've had it.
Right.
That they got it with. And yeah, so you do run into that issue where it just takes... It takes a Dystopia Rising, a futuristic, Nerf foam dart, a field to be littered with Nerf foam darts, and then a bunch of Alliance players show up, and they'll look and go, "No,
we're not
doing
renting to you.
Well, we don't have anything to do with these guys. Don't care. It's not worth the liability." Right. So there is an added level of responsibility as players, as owners, as a community. And I guess that's the key word that we want to hit here.
Absolutely.
We're a community. We are all on the same interests level. We have different views in how some of this stuff is. Like, I'll even argue with you here and say I kind of like some rolling resets. I like the idea of maybe doing a 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., allowing you to shift, like, when you want to reset your skills.
Okay.
Now, in fairness, though, they're pretty lenient on the 2 p.m. thing. When they say, hey, at 2 p.m., all your abilities turn over to the next day. But they're also on the... But if you're in queue, if you're, like, waiting for your instance dungeon to go off and, like, you're not in yet, and all of a sudden it hits 2:15, and you now get to go do your dungeon, they're not going to be like, oh,
they're not going to punish you.
They'll allow you to use those previous skills. And then roll when you come back, you get to use your new skills.
So real quick to kind of touch on some of the positive notes of the weekend. Really cool prop monster.
Oh, the big lizard thing.
Shout out to the player that made that, or the NPC that made that. Plot person that made that. Big fish naga, or
big sea monster.
But
it's all made out of like craft foam and EVA foam, I think, and such.
And if you haven't seen the photos, they are up on Traverse City Facebook page. Took a couple of them myself. He had the physical drink sea monster costume on, full head, full like immersive thing. They had a water spout. It really did look cool. They had ropes tied off to trees to represent the boat platforms or the boats. Fuck.
Now that you see it, now you hear yourself.
I do drink. So you have to. It added to the immersion of the mod itself, and I hands up, applaud to those guys. Great job. What was some of yours? Positives.
Some of my positives?
Yeah.
It sounds lame almost, but just, again, I want to touch on what you're saying with the player interaction. There was, I don't say I feel bad. The event itself was pretty good. I don't think it was a great event. From the Dungeon Master side of things, looking at it as a Dungeon Master, it was a pretty decent
average event.
It was an
average event. I would give you that.
But the interactions between the players, outside of the plot team, was really good. And that completely made my event. And to a degree, you credit that also to the plot team.
That they allowed the interactions to happen.
Not only they allowed to happen, they foster that kind of game.
Play style.
They don't just let... And it sounds like Secret Club, you don't let things... But you, like, again, I'm going to use South Michigan here as my benchmark, which they don't allow crap to get into the game. They're looking, if they see somebody roll in with tabard and cleats and cargo shorts, they're going to call them out and be like, hey, guy.
We're trying to represent a better community or a better atmosphere.
With the, again, topics we brought up in the past, with the no harassment policy.
Right.
All of these things to make the game better. Traverse City also seems to have that of, we're here to make a good experience, a good environment, a positive game. So by having that with their player base, it allows their players to interact with other players in a positive way,
and foster a better community of the players, instead of, this group's against this group and this group's against that group.
Because once you get the infighting,
a better community.
Because again, I think you're in the same boat as me. We played long enough to see a lot of the infighting between groups that
can completely plot stop a weekend.
Worse than that, it gets to the point where you had infighting of different groups that got out of game.
Yeah.
They got vicious out of game between harassment and insults and threats.
Right.
And, this is years ago, obviously.
Yeah.
The game has changed vastly. It's much more in the limelight. It's much more seen in a way of going, no, we're not gonna tolerate that. We're going to stand up and say, no, you can't harass other players. You can't chase them down like this.
You can't be bullies. You're not just a group of high level bullies. Knock it off.
Not even low level bullies too. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
Levels
true.
are relevant. You are not a bully. Stop it. And if you want to act like a bully, there's other things for you to do that don't involve being here. And by establishing that out the gate, it helped foster a community that wants to play a game together, and has also learned that difference between If you want to play a villainous type character, you don't have to be a bully about it. You don't have to ruin someone else's fun by playing an air quote bad guy. There's enough of a gray area to play in between to be like, hey, because we do it. We play it as our secondary characters, our alternate characters, where we're not villains. We're not nice guys.
Right.
But we're not villains. So my biggest thing, and again, this goes to both Traverse City and South Michigan for Alliance, is that they do a really good job fostering players and fostering a community that says, hey, we're here to play a game. We're here to have fun. We're here to encourage role play. We're here to encourage interaction with each other. We're here to encourage learning some skills that you can take into real life that you can develop from. That's my big positive. Obviously the campsite's beautiful, the players are great, the plot team has got a lot of eagerness to them. There's definitely some youthful follies that involve that, obviously learning some of the rule stuff, and I say that in a generic way. But
rules lawyer.
Who, me?
Yes.
I'm a little bit of a rules lawyer. But I'm not so much lawyer-y. And I've said it before.
You just want the core you want the core rules to be followed.
I'm generally hard when it comes to the rules because sometimes, and you've seen it in other games, especially if you're a D&D player, you have your 5th edition, 3rd edition, 3.5, whatever, and then you start creating house rules.
Right.
Sometimes house rules are really good. Other times house rules make you go, what? And the problem with that is that when you play in a game that is supposed to be
universal.
When you play a universal game, if I go to your house, Dusty, and play, 5th edition D&D, and go to my friend's house and play 5th edition at his house, it should generally be the same game. The storytelling may be different, other things. But if I go to your house and you say, oh no, elves are actually dragons, and then I go to my friend's house and says, oh no, dragons are actually pixies, or I don't know, just make up some weird rule, you start creating confusion. And for me, again, my own opinion, when those rules start to deviate, or the understanding of those rules start to deviate, then I, as a player, am unsure of what is allowed, or what is the grasp of what can happen in a game.
Right.
And I like to play within a framework of, oh, this person's able to do XYZ. How was he able to do XYZ? Well, you see, he followed this path, ABC, which led to XYZ. Okay,
so
that
in
makes
theory,
sense.
you should be able to do the same
Generally
thing and be
speaking.
able to become the same thing.
And obviously some exceptions exist, but the exception shouldn't be the rule. Oh no, everybody's special in some way. There's rules speaking. If I do this, then I should be able to have similar outcomes no matter where I play. So that's where you get into an issue of okay, it helps to make sure all the rules are across the board, because as soon as the rules start to get muddy, then they start getting interpreted on a local level, be it in a specific house or for LARPing in a specific chapter. And once those variants, you want to call them, or those local flavors start to come into play, then you're almost not playing the same game anymore.
Then it's not universal.
Then it becomes not universal, and then it just comes to a point of, well, why am I playing here when it's going to be its own thing? And in effect, it almost becomes insulary. Because now you only get your core players of 10, 15, 20, even 75 players that are just for that one game, which eliminates the ability to travel, which is one of the biggest benefits to playing this kind of game.
That you should be able to travel from chapter to chapter to chapter.
I should be able to go to Seattle, and then Portland, and then Minnesota.
Right.
And then Chicago, and then Traverse City, then South Michigan, and Kansas, and be able to bring my character and expect the same rules. If not the same experience, because obviously everybody tells their own story differently, but to expect the same rules to cut a swath across all of these locations. And unfortunately, some games will fall apart when they start, well, I'm going to do my local rule and I'm going to have my own little flavor, and then all of a sudden, the game becomes its own entity, where they're no longer a representation of that game. So, I feel a little, like I said, rules lawyer, but I'm just, I have seen too many games that have done that, too many chapters or too many just games in of itself that is split because it almost become like language.
Right.
Where, yeah, technically we're all speaking English, but you get a Texan, a Californian, and a Bostonian, and a Chicagoan in a room, and you swear they're all speaking different languages.
All right. So on that note, be sure to check into us next week. Just to give you kind of a heads up for a couple of upcoming events where you might find our Grey Muzzles at. We have Alliance Chicago Memorial Day weekend coming up this next weekend for the week of May 24th or May 20th.
This episode's coming out in just
a couple of days.
Right, so it'll be like 3 days from the release of this episode.
Right.
You'll be able to hit the Alliance Chicago Memorial Day.
The Alliance Chicago Memorial Day weekend. There's also a Alliance South Michigan, May 31st to June 2nd.
Whoa. Isn't that your birthday event?
That might be my birthday event.
So June 1st, Dusty White will be celebrating her birthday, your 24th birthday.
Oh, you're cute. Not even close.
Okay, your 20-something birthday. You're old. Your birthday at Alliance, South Michigan.
Absolutely. Come join me for hopefully spice cake, and it'll be great. You can also find Wisconsin Dystopia Rising that same weekend, May 31st through June 2nd. And there's also Nero Grand Rapids the weekend after for June 7th and 9th, 7th through the 9th. So you can check us out, Grey Muzzle Geekery, some of the people there. So, yeah.
All right, then. Anything else we're going to add? We good?
I think we're good.
All right, and remember, we are all geeks. To be otherwise may very well mean to live without passion. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White.
You can support our continued geekery at our Patreon website, patreon.com/Grey Muzzle Geekery. Be sure to check back often as we start to add geek cred levels.
You can send your questions and comments to us at greymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at Grey Muzzle Geek.
We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout.
And a special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme. And if you like what you heard, you can find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or directly from his Bandcamp page.